Essere nel futuro è la tua attitudine. È un viaggio da affrontare con i compagni giusti. Nel futuro non si va da soli. Si parte davvero quando trovi qualcuno che si prende cura del tuo talento. Il tuo modo di lavorare è un'attitudine. Il nostro mestiere è farla crescere. Randstad, dedicati al tuo lavoro.
Più investiamo nel presente, prima raggiungiamo il futuro. Questa è l'idea che ci spinge ogni giorno a muovere il nostro paese verso la ripresa, a dare a tutti nuovi percorsi da seguire, a usare l'innovazione per essere più liberi di crescere, a esportare la nostra eccellenza italiana nel mondo, ad anticipare i cambiamenti per costruire un domani più sostenibile con tutti voi. Perché il futuro è la nostra destinazione, solo se è un viaggio che facciamo insieme.
Essere nel futuro è la tua attitudine. È un viaggio da affrontare con i compagni giusti. Nel futuro non si va da soli. Si parte davvero quando trovi qualcuno che si prende cura del tuo talento. Il tuo modo di lavorare è un'attitudine. Il nostro mestiere è farla crescere. Randstad, dedicati al tuo lavoro.
Più investiamo nel presente, prima raggiungiamo il futuro. Questa è l'idea che ci spinge ogni giorno a muovere il nostro paese verso la ripresa, a dare a tutti nuovi percorsi da seguire, a usare l'innovazione per essere più liberi di crescere, a esportare la nostra eccellenza italiana nel mondo, ad anticipare i cambiamenti per costruire un domani più sostenibile con tutti voi. Perché il futuro è la nostra destinazione, solo se è un viaggio che facciamo insieme.
Buonasera a tutti.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're back here at the 2021 Rimini meeting. Good afternoon to Massimo Castelli. And we are here on the occasion of this session organized by Fondazione per la Subsidiarità. This year, we decided to entitle the session to the topic of work, future work. We're going to address this issue every time from here, but the event will be streamed on the website of the Rimini meeting of Fondazione per la Sussidiarietà, and then the newspapers Repubblica and Corriere della Sera. So we have gone through 1 year and a half characterized by the pandemic. This year and a half has changed, has completely disrupted our habits, and it has accelerated processes of change in a very unexpected way in businesses, in the offices, in the office world, in our own homes, as well as in the relations between workers. We should immediately say that we're not pretentious. We do not have any answers to provide to the challenges, to such difficult challenges. The title we gave was actually "Working is Changing What It Means," and we will try and understand what it means with the help of our guests and some services that we made in Italy and in the world. We're doing this also with the help of important guests, the Italian Ministry for Work, Andrea Orlando. We also have Minister for Equal Opportunities and the Family, Elena Bonetti, connected with us from remote. She should be seen from remote. Actually, I still do not see her, actually, but we can hear her voice. Good evening and welcome. We also have the Secretary General of the Italian Trade Union, Cisl, Luigi Sbarra. Welcome to you as well. And we have authoritative leaders of the working world, Renzo Sartori, the Managing Director of Associazione Logistica, and then the Managing Director of Randstad, which is one of the most important labor agencies in the world, Marco Ceresa. Later on, we will be joined by the President of the Foundation for Subsidiarity, Fondazione per la Sussidiarietà, Giorgio Vittadini. I'd like to immediately start by asking questions. Minister Orlando, a number of news have been reported recently. Il Sole 24 Ore yesterday presented the guidelines of your program to try and find a new job to those who lost their job. We have social security measures, and probably for the first time, or maybe differently compared to the previous government, we are starting envisaging a clear pathway in terms of vocational training. Can you confirm this news, and what are your first steps, the first steps you're going to adopt? That's true. After the summer, we will meet with the social partners. Over the last few weeks, we have worked with the regions. They play a decisive role in this sector. We talked a lot about social security measures because this is indeed an area in which stances are very distant one from the other. We also talked about active labor policies. We believe that active labor policies have to go hand in hand with some kind of supportive policies, and this can be done with lots of resources. At the moment, we have 5 billion euros coming from the recovery fund that can be used in this direction. We have a program for the employability of workers, for the guarantee of employability of workers that can be activated based on the profile of workers. In other words, we are providing differentiated answers depending on the, so to say, gap that divides the worker and the labor world. There are people who need to qualify themselves again, those workers who instead are characterized by long-lasting industrial crisis. It's important to point out that this is not only a program of financing resources, but that's a program with specific targets to objectives. So we are about to involve, we should involve 3 billion people by 2025, 3 million people, sorry, by 2025. We are targeting specific age brackets. So, for example, workers aged over 50 or special categories like women. And we have to actually focus on a specific system that should not lead us back to old style dichotomies. In other words, the focus here is on the relationship between private and public areas, and that is because basically we have lots of money to resource, and to do that we need a strong alliance among all the players who are active on this field. And I believe that this is a great challenge that lies ahead of us, that we can win. And that is because there is a strong ongoing debate going on concerning whether past mechanisms have worked. I think this is quite false, because those mechanisms were not present. That was very approximate. It was approximate to talk about active labor policies, except for private policies. And in this respect, I believe that today we have the possibility to implement historical measures. I think that also the secretary of Cisl, Sbarra, is convinced of this. Actually, we like to focus on the pathway towards work. So there is this kind of double channel that has been inaugurated to reach the same objective. So looking for work at the same time for people, is this something that you are also looking for? Well, yes, I believe that the real challenge lies in actually shifting guarantees from the workplace to the labor market. And I think it's important that in this respect we need to have a debate with the Ministry for Work on the reform of social security measures. We see lots of similarities between this program and the claims and the proposals we had formalized before. We are implementing an inclusive, solidarity-based, mutualistic, insurance-based kind of framework. The focus is on innovation, and that is because we are also covering small businesses with a number of workers below 6 units who would have otherwise been excluded. Lots of these small businesses, if we hadn't had the redundancy fund, the derogation redundancy fund had not been applied, probably these businesses would have not benefited. Then a lot of other measures would have been introduced. Other measures are going to be introduced to manage transition phases. We are also strengthening support to people who are not working at the moment, the so-called NASPI measures, or these call measures. Furthermore, finally, we see that active policies and passive policies are starting being implemented. Training is the buzzword here. We're going to invest a lot on the growth of cross-cutting digital competences, because we have to eliminate these characteristics. Italy has high unemployment rates, especially among young people and women, and we have lots of companies and businesses who at the time find it difficult to find workers, competent workers. When the two actually joined, they saw, we haven't met for a week, which means that you started debating also before. As we said, we want to start from facts. So we would like you to listen to two stories, the voices of those who lost almost everything in this year and a half of the pandemic. They have been the last ones to reopen. These are the workers of fair plays. 7.5 million workers. This business was closed for 1 year and a half. So out of 11 months in which we didn't work, we lost about 90% of our income. We were not supported by the state as promised, because the support by the state was hardly implemented. We received contributions and relief of about 12,000 euros for a total of 1 year and a half. The same problems were experienced, for example, by restaurant owners or tourist workers. The COVID-19 pandemic actually was a problem to lots of workers, especially with autonomous workers who have very little support. Our life has changed a lot. I work in my bedroom. I have a small area in which I record podcasts. Daniela is 34 years old. He is an autonomous worker with a VAT license. Over the last 18 months, about 345,000 workers like him lost their job. He actually started doing his business, working with big companies. At the beginning, actually, all went well. But then the pandemic came that accelerated smart working, sales dropped, and contracts as well. And actually, this was very difficult for this kind of workers. Companies became more resilient, more resistant to training. So I basically had to find solutions that could, in a way, be some kind of a buffer for the loss that I had suffered. So he organized online courses, but economically it was very difficult. Compared to the past, income is lower, work is higher, and actually the work is not so much fun. It is as if you were always on the front line. Starting from the beginning of the pandemic, I think I lost about 50% of my turnover. And actually, however, there is a time that I recovered with my family that compensates, that makes up for the income lost. That's very interesting. This actually reduced income but increased time spent with the family. But I don't know if this is actually adequate consolation given the times. We said this at the beginning. We talked about two peculiar stories, but they show us what point we have reached. I would like to give you some figures. Let me give you some figures on the employment rate in Italy. Between 2019 and 2020, the employment rate went down. And now it's slightly over 58% compared to the European average of 67.5%. In other words, in Italy, we have 10% workers less compared to the European Union. Plus, there are two additional pieces of data which are even more worrying: young people and female employment. So young people, in Italy, we have 36.8% of young people, which is below the European average. And as regards female employment, women's employment, we have 49% compared to the European average of 62%. In Europe, that's yet another element for reflection. Only two regions reach the European average, which are Lombardy and Emilia-Romagna, while 4 regions in the south of Italy, according to Eurostat, are at the very bottom of the European chart. So in Italy, we have just 1 woman out of 2 working. So I'd like to ask Minister Bonetti. I think this piece of data is alarming. We talked about training. We will continue talking about social security measures. However, this problem is paramount when it comes to the political decisions to be made for families. In other words, the problem the women face to combine personal and professional responsibilities. Another big issue is that of the pay gap between men and women. How do you think that we can reverse this huge disparity between Italy and Europe, especially when it comes to women's work? Well, first of all, by taking on the responsibility to recognize that either we kind of release and free women's potential, or we won't reach the possibility to restart that positive pathway that can actually give hope to both women and men. And to do that, we need a strategy, and that is why the government has decided for the first time to equip itself with a 5-year strategy for gender equality. So equal opportunities are priorities for the government, because the social and territorial disparities are recognized, and targets and clear parameters are set that can in a way trace the roadmap of the evaluation of the impact for the investments of the NRRP. So actually young people and women, together with the overcoming of territorial debates, is one of the priority axes. Actually, this is a major issue that pertains to training, the training of women. As a matter of fact, women are underrepresented when it comes to new competencies, digital, scientific, financial competence. So we need to focus on these STEM competencies. We need to overcome obsolete stereotypes that are no longer acceptable today to have a future. We need to invest in women entrepreneurship. We need to invest in positive actions for women. Our country suffers from a static inertia when it comes to women's work, and to modify that, of course, we need to actually implement tax measures, support those tools that can help women combine their family life with their professional life, and it's not only for women but also for men. Women, of course, are the most disadvantaged group, and that also means that we need to introduce rewarding measures for the implementation of the NRRP. In other words, conditionality on the employment of women and the indexes for equal opportunities, and the promotion of female professional pathways within companies. For example, when it comes also to accessing public bids, public procurement. So there should also be transparency in the pay gap, and also the issue of the equal pay. And then, as you said, we also need to intervene when it comes to family policies. Our country has pursued an inefficient model. We convinced women that they had to choose between being a mother and being workers. So we need also to implement a cultural model, because the cultural model we adopted imposed women to choose between the two. This, of course, deprived women of the freedom to be themselves in choosing whether to have a child and what kind of work they wanted to have. And it also induced us to, in a way, focus on certain priorities rather than others. I'd like to have an answer from you and the other minister. How long will it take to reverse the bad figures we saw? For our 2026 strategy, we would like to be one of the first 10 European countries when it comes to gender equality policies. And we would like to activate an irreversible process for the full attainment of gender equality. 2026 will also be the final year of the Next Generation EU. How about, what's your opinion, Minister Orlando? There is also an issue, the issue of fighting against the informal economy. Many people work, but they are not registered, so to say. The national plan, in the national plan, we committed ourselves with the European Union. We committed ourselves to achieve targets when it comes to fighting against the informal economy. So we also have to make a huge quality leap to fight against informal work. Thank you very much, Minister Orlando and Minister Bonetti. Let us move on.
So this crisis has been asymmetrical. Some lost everything, and others saw their turnover increase. New opportunities were created for some workers. We found two stories, a company working in the field of applied technology, and another one, a company working with two machines. We asked Barbara Colombo, the president of UCIMO, which factors for success can be identified for this kind of sector. One of the critical success factors of the sector dealing with tool machineries is flexibility, the rapidity in reacting, and resilience. To us, the fact of being structured at an international level with a support and a local presence which is direct on the territory was of great help. It helped us because we are closer to our final customers, and over the last couple of years during the pandemic, we managed to maintain a direct link, a direct contact with our final customers. In addition to internationalization, it was also important to exploit the critical points caused by the coronavirus to increase and to speed up the processes in the company. We needed to speed up the process of digitalization within our companies. I'm referring first and foremost to the technical assistance. When it comes to production, we revised the organization of the working hours. The testing phase, for instance, was carried out by web connections, so in remote. In order to accept our machinery, our customers adjusted to this new method of working by observing the machinery functioning from a remote place, and they accepted the machine from a distance. So the pandemic forced the company to increase digitalization, and on the other hand, the smart working led to an increase of possible solutions to respond to new demands. The pandemic increased the awareness of the fact that technology can be applied to have an opportunity to increase competitiveness, efficacy, and effectiveness of one's own processes. The twin transition, this parallelism of projects, digital transformation of companies, and the green transformation are in a way the key elements of the agenda for the future. We do have the awareness, and now we need to put into practice the ideas that we have, and we need huge investments when it comes to competencies, skills, and human capital. To this purpose, the VEM Sistemi, based in Forlì with 270 employees, increased its production by 15% of the last 8 months. They are going to establish a 3-year course at the university because they had many difficulties in finding skilled workers. It is a tragedy for us because it is a paradox. We talk a lot about unemployment, but we do have compartments and sectors such as our own sector. For instance, cybersecurity, we have profiles of workers which cannot be found at all. So one person available out of a demand of 5 to 7 profiles of this kind in our sector. Thank you very much for this reportage. I would like to start from these words, and I would like to address Marco Ceresa. For some professions, we just have one candidate for 5 or 7 persons being demanded. You are the head of one of the most important job agencies. You work in 40 different countries, and you are faced with the problem of job matching. Is it only a problem of Italy, or does it have to do with other countries? It is a problem of the entire world. It is a problem we have to face every day in our subsidiaries. I talked with my colleagues in Rimini today, and they told me we have more jobs being demanded, offered, than people available to do these jobs. So we started to think about what we could do in this respect. We divided our activities in activities that can be carried out in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. So we organize academies, so periods of some weeks in which we provide some training along with the customers in order to train the new employees, the new workers. Another activity we carry out is the outplacement. Namely, we help people working in companies which are having trouble in terms of market crisis to take these workers and place these workers into other companies. It is very important. With the academies, we work with the needs, whereas with the second activity, we focus on people with previous experience. This is for the short term. As for the medium term, we know we need experts in cybersecurity, so we organize ETS. One is organized by our own foundation, and there are others in the territory. So over the course of 2 years, we managed to train people with theoretical classes, theoretical lessons and practice, and we managed to train both young people and older people, so to say. We have many concerts with the high schools, and we try to orient people and to guide people, bearing in mind their own skills and attitudes and the demands in the medium term when it comes to the market. When it comes to the long-term strategy, we are faced with a very important problem in Italy. We have we live in a country which is aging, so we should spread our activities all over the national territory. We have our headquarters, but we have many small subsidiaries in small villages. One is located, for instance, in Basilicata, and it's a village with 2,700 inhabitants. Families are created more easily in small centers, in small villages, rather than in the towns. So Randstad should also Randstad focuses on the baby Randstad. So we provide a financial aid for kindergarten, for nursing schools for the kids, and we also give 1,000 euros, which is an incentive to help people decide to have kids. Otherwise, Italy will see its GDP diminish over the next few years, because we will have more people in retirement than people in their active working age. There's a detail which is a source of curiosity to me. Today in Italy, are people available to go and live in another place in order to find a job? They need to be helped. We have a bilateral entity which may help people move from one place to another. For instance, by anticipating the money needed to pay for the rent of a house, they provide a limited amount of money to help them. But the general answer is yes. Many young people decide to go abroad to get a job, to look for a job. We must work so that it becomes attractive to remain in Italy and to find a job in Italy. There's a lot of work to be carried out. It is not true that only young people are choosy. In many cases, companies are also very choosy. So a company should understand that it is not possible to have the perfect candidate on the very first day, but if you manage to provide the proper training, in the end you will have the appropriate candidate for your company. As for demography, demography is one of the 4 key issues the job market is confronted with. I would like to leave the floor to Mr. Sartori. One of the sectors which saw the turnover increase during the pandemic is the logistics sector, which has proved to be strategic. I would like to know what is your viewpoint, especially when it comes to mismatching. A few weeks ago, some pictures of empty shelves in the UK were made public because truck drivers are no longer willing to carry the goods to the UK supermarkets. Are we going to have empty supermarkets in Italy as well in September? There's a shortage of lorry drivers, right? Well, you've raised quite an important issue. I would like to know the viewpoints when it comes to active policies for job creation. I believe that with the COVID-19, with the pandemic, we discovered that logistics is an essential service. Logistics was not a topic of discussion. It was taken for granted, and we did discover its importance during the period of the pandemic, but we also discovered all the problems related to this sector. I was talking a few weeks ago with a minister. Everybody knows about the problems, about social issues. Everybody is aware of the illegal work in the logistics sector as well. So logistics is an essential sector, but it also has its weaknesses. This sector is experiencing a problem which is not a trivial one. It is paying for all the increases in the price of raw materials which, well, for instance, wood has been increasing its price by 400% and still also experience an increase in its price, or the increase in the cost of work contracts without bearing in mind quality. At the same time, as you were saying, we have a shortage of truck drivers. It is a problem we have been facing in 2007, 2008. It has become evident with the pandemic. During the past summer, many supermarkets did not receive the provisions. This problem also exists in the US. In many cases, you choose truck drivers coming from the Eastern European countries, but they are no longer coming from Eastern European countries. When we talk about active policies, we should also work on these sectors. We should bear in mind the professionalism. Being a truck driver means being a professional worker. The same applies to those working in the warehouses of the supermarkets, of the chain stores. If we want to provide dignity to this sector and to all the other sectors, what is needed is a sort of a covenant. We should create a covenant between the trade unions, the producers, the institutions, and all the stakeholders, because this is a real challenge for an essential sector. We should have a covenant, a pact providing dignity to the workers of this sector. In the past, many truck drivers came from Croatia, from Slovenia, from Romania as well. But today, Italy is no longer attractive because we have quite big problems in Italy. If you go and make a delivery to a supermarket, the truck driver usually waits for 4 hours with the truck full of goods. It is a structural problem. So a truck driver coming from Slovenia or coming from Romania decides to go and work in Germany, and he no longer comes to work in Italy. 10 years ago, the wage gap was more significant than it is now. So they have filled the gap, and we have been losing positions in terms of wage capacity, wage power. So let's open up a new window towards the world. We decided this year to have a window open towards the world. We're going to have some interviews to experts, and also with some reportage talking about rescue and about the end of marginalization. And I would like to start with Venezuela. As we all probably know, Venezuela has been experiencing a tremendous period of crisis. Venezuela is now a very poor country. despite being rich in raw materials, Venezuela has become a land of migration. Many people decide to go away from Venezuela. My company is called Maribel's Beauty Salon. Beauty is linked to feelings. I am 35 years old, and I am an entrepreneur in the sector of automotive mechanics. The snack Barquisimeto started when dreaming about being able to reach the kids. My mother has always prepared cakes and sweets, and we decided to recover and to go back to traditional recipes. I am an entrepreneur dealing with chocolate. Our name is Chocolate La Seroica. We met in a program called Chocolates 360. We decided to join our forces in order to carry out a unique, a single project altogether. From simple members, we became a real team of friends, of sisters. All this thanks to chocolate. I left my office, my work in the office, and I decided to become a chocolate maker. Work is a way to give dignity to human beings because it develops perseverance, patience, and discipline. And it helps us have our financial independence, and we managed to be rewarded from a financial point of view. It is a lifestyle for us. I was a laboratory assistant, but my situation changed, and I decided to go back to something I really liked. I started in my living room, and then I had so many customers, I had to adjust another room, another space. In 2018, I was informed about a program called Emprendedoras de la Belleza. It offered techniques, and it could strengthen my entrepreneurship. And I decided to take part in this program. I really like to work. I feel that I can express what I am, what I feel, and it helps me being useful for my family. Being an entrepreneur means having more quality time for my family. And I also managed to do the things I like. One of my friends said, we need to start working hard, and she gave me 5 kilos of flour during the pandemic. And we've been working for the past year, and we've been increasing our business. What I really like is that my customers enjoy eating my food. Working means growing, evolving. Each day we learn something new. I was, well, there was an angel which was sent to me, and one day she told me, we're going to be together for our lives. So I provide mechanic services. 6 years ago, I enrolled in a program which was called Conduciendo il Futuro. After finishing the program, I fell in love with my job. I found a new goal. My family did not support me because I thought I was too young to work. But when I started to take part in the program, I showed that I was able to become a good worker. To me, working means growing as a person because it shapes your character. I can help other people, and it gives me a reason for living. So today I can say I'm sure I will have a better future. Work to me is an opportunity to deal with something I like. Work helps us to have our role in society. I discovered that through entrepreneurship, we can manage to reach out to a lot of people. We can generate joy in the people eating our food.
Questo meeting 2021. Il coraggio.
So the courage to say I is the title of this 2021 Rimini meeting. So what we have heard are examples of a poor economy. However, the people we listen to are telling us how important and decisive work is for the dignity of the people who do it. So I'm would like to draw back to these examples from Venezuela to talk about the Italian situation. We have understood that in Italy we need more work. But isn't there an issue related to the dignity of this work? So the title of the session is Working Means Changing. It means actually putting ourselves to the test again, questioning our previous activities. So, in your projects, how much support is there for workers to question themselves? Well, there's a lot of that, and as a matter of fact, the Recovery Fund aims at reducing inequalities. So this is very much our area. The same structure of our measures goes in this direction. And I think this is already a very important political success that has been registered in Europe. This was not at all to be taken for granted because over the last 20 years, much has been done to, in a way, make work of less value and more fragmented. For example, before we talked about logistics. Some operators are reconsidering the decisions they made in the past, for example, when it comes to delocalization, in order to bring workers back to the big companies. And that is because they have realized that denying the dignity of work is not even a way to be competitive. I believe that if you continue thinking that you become more competitive, if you reduce the reward given to work, is something that we should take into account. Pope Francis has actually invited us to ignore the lessons learned from the pandemic and how important respect for mankind is, attention, care. These are all elements which in the past were not considered at all or were considered very little by the market. We realized how important it is to have someone to care, take care of you. Looking at this with the parameters of pre-pandemic parameters, that was actually the very last thing to be taken into account. And in fact, it has become topical. So this is a lesson that we have learned, and we shouldn't forget it. I'm not optimistic. I think that there is some kind of a window in which this kind of lesson can be still used, but then the risk to go back to previous lectures is very high. Well, I believe there is an opportunity. I do not believe that this opportunity will be there endlessly, infinitely, because I can realize that also past ideas are still coming to the surface, even the ones which have actually helped create an imbalanced work. I think the risk is there. After a period in which we focused on the central role of the person, I believe that this idea runs the risks of becoming of minor importance. Let me ask Minister Bonetti, I don't know if you're optimistic, and let me add you yet another element. Looking at the examples of these women, we can see that there are other subjects, for example, trabajo y personas, so groups, organizations who support these women in their pathway. In Italy, too, we have organizations and subjects like La Trabajo y Personas. Do you believe they should be supported? Well, yes, I think it is fundamental because we today need to give hope. We need to give men and women the possibility to make future choices, and to do that we need, of course, to give them hope. And we have, however, to recognize that those who have been defeated by the pandemic are the individual, and the loneliness of the individual, and what comes out as a winner is the person. So solidarity is the winning factor. That is why individual choices, ambitions and choices, for example, of the people you showed, could be implemented because there has been a community in which those wishes were implemented with a clear prospect, which means economic support and then training and then services. In other words, a context to support these people. which is not only the mere social security measure to face the crisis, but it is rather supporting them because we are recognizing that everybody's personal history can be implemented within a given society. That's why we need subsidiarity, and we need to plan together with those organizations. That is actually our main responsibility, because work can be an element of social change. It is an element, it is a kind of work that generates examples of change. And this can be implemented only if we share a responsibility, and the same community has to become responsible for that. So probably Minister Bonetti is more optimistic than Minister Orlando, judging from her words. I have a number of questions that have emerged. Thank you, Mario Ceresa, for participating. We're waiting for the president of the Foundation for Subsidiarity, Professor Vittadini. Unfortunately, we need to keep the distances, and we cannot have more than 4 people. Thanks for your contribution to the debate. Before leaving the floor to you, I would like to show you the last service we prepared. It's a very peculiar story. We're talking about workers who are demonstrating against the closure, against the shutdown of their companies. And so workers have decided to invest in this company. They invested their severity, their severance, and
mentre prima che eravamo in Ferroli, l'azienda.
While we were not working, the company was about to go bankrupt, and we as workers tried to save our jobs, and we became partners to, in a way, acquire the foundry. This way we saved our jobs. So these workers became partners. So we now have a cooperative, 63 workers who actually invested their investments, their savings. Actually, the spirit of these people changed. They were partners, and as such, they work for their company. How long have you been working here? Ever since actually the cooperative was set up, since 2017. My name is Igor Otaro. I am in charge of the total quality system, and I am 32. We would like to have an increasing number of young people working with us, people who believe in this and who want the good for this company. We are here in San Bonifacio in the province of Verona, and here we produce boilers and brake discs that are exported all over the world. We now have technology that can help us export the first condensing boiler for all over the world, and this will actually make us competitive for our potential customers. Actually, this is a very touching history for me. Actually, that's the history of people who lost their job at the age of 45 with a family, and who had the strength to put themselves at stake again. I believed in this project ever since the very first day. So we're now in Messina. Here we have the same story. 6 years ago, the employees joined their forces and savings in order not to leave their job. And actually they launched a new brand, the Birra dello Stretto. Back then there were 41 people who were fired, and 15 set up a cooperative. There is no worker who is more valuable than the other. Today we have 6 lines of beer, and there are 26 partners. So the pandemic didn't stop the courage of this Sicilian worker who look at the future for their children. So these people have left us with a legacy, the moral ethics of always progressing, always going forward, because actually the results will be visible sooner or later. We would like to serve as an example also for our children and for those who lost their job. So we tell everybody not to abandon their land and believe in their territory, because if you stop, you're bound to lose. Actually, if a person aged 60 didn't stop and went on working, why should a 25-year-old do this?
Ringraziamo Simona Gallo per questo servizio.
Thank you, Simona Gallo, for this report. We would like to welcome Professor Vittadini, President of the Foundation for Subsidiarity. So, Sbarra, what do all these stories teach us? Well, cooperative comes back. They are very significant experiences. They show the great responsibility on the part of many people. And in a sense, I would like to remind you that we signed an important agreement on the 20th of January with the cooperatives and the trade unions on the topic of initiatives to support projects for work buyout. It is one of the pathways to cover in order to protect and safeguard jobs and companies. It is an interesting project that we shared, which helps us govern and manage a company crisis and difficult processes when it comes to generation change within the same company. And it also helps us use in a profitable way movable and immovable properties confiscated to the mafia members. And thanks to our work, we have incentives for people willing to create projects of cooperation, and we also support entrepreneurs willing to deliberately give to their employees, to their workers, the entire company. I believe this is one of the most significant experiences dealing with innovation, which have been put in practice, and they highlight the responsibility of the individual people, and they also help us discuss and define how valuable it is today to talk about participation and the willingness of people to collaborate in managing their own company, in managing the companies they work in. It is an entirely new topic, and we would like to continue working with the associations of entrepreneurs and the associations of employers and with the institutions, because we would like to increase this kind of experiences, because they are a source of inspiration, because they show how important it is to share responsibility on the part of the workers. And I leave the floor to Professor Vittadini. I would like to show you a chart before asking you the question. I found it in your latest report, and this is the chart dealing with the monthly variation in Italy when it comes to job-related announcements on the web. So during some months, as you can see from the chart, the announcements related to job creation decreased, but then they started to increase again, with the exception of the summer months of July and August. They managed to be higher than the same trend in 2019. How did the labor market change when it comes to analyzing these announcements on the web? Well, work is constantly changing. After the lockdown, after the pandemic, the change is even more constant and continuous. So first of all, we need to have a particular kind of attitude. We should be willing to take risks, not alone, of course, but joining forces with other works. in order to increase the safeguards. But instead of saying that you need to help yourself, and only in this case God will help you, we need the state, we need the institutions to help us. And in order to carry out this kind of change, we need to have active labor measures. If nobody helps you, you will never manage to change. And then we also need an enormous effort when it comes to education and training, an effort which has never been made in Italy. And as Minister Bonetti said, we also need to help women to combine and to manage to combine the time they spend in the workplace and the time they need to spend with their family. The Silicon Valley was born from great entrepreneurs who started off as small entrepreneurs, and they received lots of aid from the state. If we do not help all these people by making the necessary changes in family policies, active labor measures, and the other element I mentioned earlier, we will have the chart worsen, and that's for sure. So transitions need to be accompanied, and the wage scheme needs to be a period in which training courses are provided. It should not be simply a period of suspension in which a worker is not working. So they need to be revised in a clever way so that they become part of the active labor measures. Otherwise, we run the risk of having many damages brought about by the transition in case it is not regulated properly. Do you think that the wage based on citizenship, as it is today, can be an aid or a hindrance? I believe that this is the result of a big misunderstanding. This kind of income is quite a useful measure to combat poverty, but active labor measures need to be taken into account in their as a whole, not simply focusing on this kind of income. I think that the real problems of this kind of income is that of being able of intercepting poverty. This is the real question we should focus on. We should not expect this kind of income to create new jobs. I only would like to state that there is a valuable aspect. We appreciate it very much that in the decree dated 30th of June for the financing of wage support measures, the government decided to allocate 50 million euros in activities to support the outplacement training of people in being temporarily unemployed. This is a first signal which is very important. We should support it. Any worker, any employee receiving a wage support measure should be obliged, compelled to take part in a training course, because this is the only way to eliminate, at least partly, the illegal work in Italy. We have 2 minutes left for the minister. Well, we should start to put into practice policies and measures so that people can really use their skills and their potentials. We need tools, we need training, as a previous speaker said, and we need to give back a perspective of family-based policies and work-related policies and measures go hand in hand in this sense. We decided to focus once again on the training of young people and the aspect related to women as workers, because one of the elements mentioned earlier needs to be a leverage accompanying us towards the future. We need to unleash an extraordinary potential which is present in a country. I would like to conclude by saying that for too many years, politics has only focused on dividing the ones against the others. We need to reunite the workers. All the stories we heard are the demonstration that these are the new faces of the new workers. I believe that work and jobs can change only if these new alliances are able to ignite covenants and associations and groups of citizens and groups of workers. We have come to the end of our talk. We would like to thank Minister Orlando, Minister Bonetti, the General Secretary of our trade union, Mr. Sbarra. And tomorrow evening, we're going to have another talk, Work to Come, at 7 p.m. in streaming on the Rimini meeting website. We're going to have another talk tomorrow, Work with No Boundaries. Father Antonio Lofredo, Maurizio Martina, Alberto Sinigaglia. We're going to have many distinguished guests, and I would like to remind you that the meeting lives because of gratuity, because of voluntary work. And this year, this gratuity is being extended to devote part of the money received to help a house in Kampala where some kids coming from difficult situations are being helped. Dona Ora is a series of desks where you can donate. So good evening to you all, and we will see you tomorrow evening. Thank you very much.
Più investiamo nel presente, prima raggiungiamo il futuro. Questa è l'idea che ci spinge ogni giorno a muovere il nostro paese verso la ripresa, a dare a tutti nuovi percorsi da seguire, a usare l'innovazione per essere più liberi di crescere, a esportare la nostra eccellenza italiana nel mondo, ad anticipare i cambiamenti per costruire un domani più sostenibile con tutti voi. Perché il futuro è la nostra destinazione, solo se è un viaggio che facciamo insieme.
Essere nel futuro è la tua attitudine. È un viaggio da affrontare con i compagni giusti. Nel futuro non si va da soli. Si parte davvero quando trovi qualcuno che si prende cura del tuo talento. Il tuo modo di lavorare è un'attitudine. Il nostro mestiere è farla crescere. Randstad, dedicati al tuo lavoro.
Più investiamo nel presente, prima raggiungiamo il futuro. Questa è l'idea che ci spinge ogni giorno a muovere il nostro paese verso la ripresa, a dare a tutti nuovi percorsi da seguire, a usare l'innovazione per essere più liberi di crescere, a esportare la nostra eccellenza italiana nel mondo, ad anticipare i cambiamenti per costruire un domani più sostenibile con tutti voi. Perché il futuro è la nostra destinazione, solo se è un viaggio che facciamo insieme.
Essere nel futuro è la tua attitudine. È un viaggio da affrontare con i compagni giusti. Nel futuro non si va da soli. Si parte davvero quando trovi qualcuno che si prende cura del tuo talento. Il tuo modo di lavorare è un'attitudine. Il nostro mestiere è farla crescere. Randstad, dedicati al tuo lavoro.